All right, I think we are going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here today. My name is Amy Portello Nelson. I'm an independent consultant with Substratum Systems. My partner is going to introduce himself in a second. He's sitting right next to me, but we're on different computers because this is technology and we're figuring it out. And we have been working with Stockton Art League over the past month and a half to help them develop a strategic plan for the next few years. And part of that vision is figuring out what we want to see for the community in general, not just for Stockton Art League. And in order for that to really take flight and be real, we need other partners here at the table. And that's what this time and space is about today. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start screen sharing. And while we do that, I just wanted to say, like I said, the beginning part of this is going to be a presentation. Actually, before we screen share, everyone who's on the Stockton Art League board and has been part of this process of strategic planning so far, wave your hands around so everyone can see you. Yay, thank you so much to everyone whose voices have helped to build this. And you'll hear more from them later because they're doing most of the presentation here for you.
So a quick review of the goals for today. We have been doing a lot of visioning and strategic planning with the Stockton Art League, and what began as a what do we want for Stockton Art League really became what do we want for the arts community in Stockton. And we're at a point in the planning now where we want to kind of gather community members that we see as potential partners or just people that we really would appreciate input from, and kind of review what we've done so far and then go into breakout groups and kind of discuss the initiatives that we're talking about doing individually. What that's going to look like is we're going to talk a little bit about the current vision, and then talk about the specific initiatives that we're looking at, and then breaking up into groups. Do you have anything to add to this?
The only thing that I would add to that is just some logistics for the day. So like we said, for those of you that have been on for a few minutes, if you are just joining, please make sure to introduce yourself in the chat, your name and organization. We are recording this because we want to make sure that we are getting everyone's input, and so we can take notes and go back over this later. If that makes you uncomfortable and you want to close your camera or whatever makes you feel comfortable, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of that. But we hope that you will show us your lovely faces so that we can enjoy the conversation later on. And if you have questions, there's going to be an opportunity for questions later on. Feel free to just type those in the chat, and we will get to them in a little while. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and move on.
Yeah, we'd like to hand it off to Jessica Fong, who's the executive director at Stockton Art League. So she was the person who first saw the opportunity to have this process, and and so we wanted to give her a little background history on it. Jessica?
Hey everyone. It's really encouraging to see everyone on this list, and I know I sent a few emails out a little bit earlier. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy from all the smoke. So we had a great opportunity to get a grant for this project, something that, you know, originally the Stockton Art League would never have been able to put together. And, you know, if you don't know about the California Arts Council, definitely check it out. They have lots of grants for the kids programs, for adults, for visual artists, musicians, theater. It was one of our first grants we wrote, and we seem to have gotten it. And that was kind of encouraging to see that, you know, the San Joaquin County is really underrepresented with their grants program. So definitely check it out. But this whole idea was, you know, what does the Stockton Art League need and what can it provide to the community? And we know that we can't do it alone. We know that there's many organizations here, and this is just a fraction of who's in this meeting. It's a fraction of what the arts are actually doing in town, but I think it's a good start. And the more we can work together in the community, I think we can see a larger impact within the arts. So as this note says, we're in meeting 4 of 6 of this strategic planning with Amy and Nate. And so I'll let them explain what they're going to do today.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, so this whole process, it's kind of this process that begins big and begins to narrow down as we progress into what exact action items we want to meet. So, but it starts big and it starts with vision. And for this process, we've really encouraged the board to just dream big. Like, let's talk about what reality we want to see for the arts in all of Stockton. And these are some of the bigger ideas that really came up, and a lot of it really came down to just improving the vibrancy of art in Stockton. We wanted to see a city that people knew as an arts city, that came here because of our arts. A lot of it had to do with de-siloing too. We all represent various forms of art, and oftentimes we, like a lot of other folks in the nonprofit sector, we get in our lane and we don't think about how we could have some really amazing synergies between the arts. And finally, one of the other big ideas too was talking about how do we lift arts up as and share its importance to us. One of the great ideas that I really heard out of all of this is a couple of people who said, like, in this time specifically, arts is what's keeping us all sane. You know, we're all we're all at home in our little pods, and we would probably be losing it if it weren't for artists in our community and in our world. So, and one of the other ideas we talked about too really was how do we amp this up? How do we fund our arts to a degree to where people are really able and enabled and capable of doing what we know they can do? And I think those two points are kind of tied too. So, comments?
Yeah, I think Nate laid out some of the big picture ideas that came up, but I really want to focus on the process and the reason why we had Stockton Art League go through this. And I mean, probably everybody on this call has been through some sort of strategic planning session before, where you sit there and you think, what are our goals and how are we going to get there, and let's make a plan, and then you write it all out and you put it on a shelf and maybe you look at it again. And we didn't want that, and neither does Stockton Art League. They came with us and they said, you know, we got this grant and we want it to be about more than Stockton Art League. We want to figure out how can we create a plan for our community of Stockton as a whole. And so we started this process by talking about what is the difference between a vision and a mission, not in the boring, like, put it down on paper, here's your vision statement and your mission statement, but like, what does it mean to have a vision of your city, to have a vision of your arts community? It's about something that's bigger than any one organization, any one figurehead, even any one type of art. So we really had them talk about what do you want Stockton to look like, sound like, smell like, and how do you envision seeing art everywhere, incorporated into all the different facets of work that we see? How is it important in all of these different areas? Whether you're talking about beautification or healing or career paths, like, how do we build this into the framework of our system? And that's where we started. And we talked about that for quite a long time. And the whole idea was really about, this is bigger than Stockton Art League. And so how do you turn a vision that big into something real? Well, you got to get other partners at the table. You got to share this vision with other people and find out who else shares this idea, who else wants to see these same things, and who else might want to be a part of some of the strategies that we've identified to move that vision forward and actually build it into fruition. And so that's why we're here today, to share what that vision is. And we're in the process of distilling down what is Stockton Art League's role in that vision? You know, what part are they going to play? But we're hoping that by showing all of this to you and getting your input and making this vision an even larger collection of ideas from you all stakeholders, that you all will start to think about what parts you might want to play in this vision and how can we adapt this vision to include the work that you are doing as well. So really that's what we're kind of hoping to get out of this today. So this slide, I think some of our board members are going to help talk about. I think it's
Paula. And the basic premise of this slide is after you share that vision and really figure out the world that you want to see and what you want our reality to look like, you talk about some of the basic strategies that you could use to maybe move that forward a bit. Paula, I had your name on this too, so do you mind saying a few words?
No, I can start here. Initially, as a new board member of the Art League, when I first got involved with this process, we were thinking, you know, what is it that the Art League needs to be doing to move itself forward? And in terms of this vision, it got very real very quickly that there was so much more that was needed in the community. And yet the Art League itself had so much dynamic energy and some new blood and some impetus from recent social changes, from Black Lives Matter, the implosion of our society as we know it, plus COVID. I mean, it really allowed us to sit back and say, okay, who are our people? And how are we going to move Stockton forward? So you'll notice on here there are 6 squares, six areas. Each of these is a separate initiative, and we'll be talking about them individually and planning with all of you in these various areas. But you might think that the Art League at first would just be thinking, how do we move our programs forward? How do we engage the community in art, more galleries, get younger people, increase the diversity, support emerging artists, etc. But look at what came out of this. Building strategic partners with other arts organizations. The next one, hosting diverse opportunities for local art. You'll notice that history is in that one right there. And that was brought up. Amal was very, very adamant about bringing in who we were, where we've come from, how to, she speaks about this so much more eloquently in terms of recognizing where we've come, the mistakes we've made, the choices we've made, how it includes or excludes people, and so on. So I won't get too far into that, but look on to the next one, sustainability for the arts. That's really all about the arts endowment again. We're not going to hide that. That's about creating a major endowment that supports artists at multiple levels and arts organizations. So I'll stop because I think Amy's going to be involved in this, and I'll let her talk about the next 3.
To build off of what Paula was saying, so from the vision, we distilled these down into strategies, and strategies can encompass programs, and we have some examples on here of different ideas of programming, but it also includes things like advocacy and fundraising and education and communication and all of these things that encompass moving an actual strategy forward. And we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the big ideas that Stockton Art League would like to try and move forward. But really, these are some of the 6 central strategies that we think will really help to move the vision that we talked about into fruition. And so, let's see, which one?
I can add a little bit more because I know we have representatives now from 2 other really potential players, the Stockton Arts Commission and the Stockton Arts Foundation. And those are 2 legitimizing agencies that have already been laid in our community to engage the political bodies and to have an opportunity to create a more of an umbrella or just a larger presence with national or regional fundraising initiatives, etc. So we're really grateful today that Arts Commission and Arts Foundation members are here, because as you can see, when you start talking about improving the communication and engagement, when you start talking about advocating for artists, building strategies and sustaining the arts in general, this is not the task of one arts organization. It's a much more cohesive and, as they used the word before, synergy building activity.
Yep. Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah, so I think we got through, I don't know that I don't necessarily want to read all of these,
Right.
but I think, you know, just the big general idea is making sure that we are building partnerships, advocating in lots of different ways for funding, for inclusion, we talked a lot about the difference between advocating for arts and advocating for artists as very different and equally important things. Hosting and supporting diverse opportunities for local art and local artists, improving communication and engagement, that definitely came up a lot as an important thing, with a lot of different ideas for how that could happen, a lot of different entities and organizations that can help either be a hub or a network of hubs. Sustainability, as Paula talked about a lot, and then highlighting the impact of arts across sectors, and that's something that we're just starting to talk about, but wanting to dive in more with a more diverse group of people around the table. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on into the next slide. And this one, we're gonna have Jessica and Denny from Stockton Art League talk about, but I'll just say that in terms of the strategic planning process, what we did was we kind of got to those 6 big ideas, those 6 strategies, and then, you know, that's the part where people start to get really freaked out when you start talking about that in a strategic planning process. Like, how in the world are we going to do all of this stuff? And no matter how many times we say it's not just Stockton Art League that's going to move this forward, it feels like a really heavy lift. So then we started to talk about what are the strengths, what are the roles for Stockton Art League, what are the things that they want to do as of right now to be a part of moving this forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica and Denny to talk a little bit more about what they see.
Thank you. What I wanted to talk about too is, having been on the board since 2013, we have done quite a bit in terms of what goes successfully on in the Miracle Mile and the art community. We've done our monthly artist receptions, and we have very good turnout, selecting the various artists and artist groups that then we represent their particular style has been really, in terms of having even new different styles. Part of the thing was, one of the reasons why I wanted to join Stockton Art League, when I first was looking into various galleries, I was seeing who would accept my abstract art. As you can see right on the screen, my Balancing the Universe. When I took something like that at first to the Stockton Art League, the lady there was saying, oh no, we don't do abstract art. So it took me at least a couple of years looking at what's changed with Stockton Art League, and then also having Jessica come on board. We're very much open to having the new trends in art displayed in the gallery. And that's something I really wanted to promote, and it's happening. We've done a lot of community events. Anytime there's an event at the Miracle Mile, the Sip and Stroll, we want to promote the Miracle Mile, but we want to then show to people that haven't been in the gallery before who we are and what we're about. Things that we've done too is this huge promotion with youth art. Mary and her group has done very much in terms of succeeding having the various art classes for the youth. So we've done now about 3 years of that and been really successful in doing that. Jessica, if you want to add some other things that you've been involved in.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Let's see, I'm not muted. Okay, one thing to note is we're located at 1902 Pacific Avenue. That space exists because of Elsie Mae Goodwin, who ended up donating a large portion of her estate to let the Stockton Art League have a home, in a sense, and have a gallery permanent space that they're not running from place to place. And I think this is a, you know, underutilized community asset, being that it's a paid for space. And so it can be an event space. It can be a place where people can do workshop demos. We have a few people here in the group who have done those, and it's been exciting to bring in new artists who might not have seen that as a possibility. We've had it where, you know, the fire marshal says we can fit 66 people into that space, and we do. And maybe a couple kids extra, but we have the event space itself, which is a nice positive to what we can do. We've also partnered with several art groups in town, and we hope to keep that growing. The one thing with the, you know, a paid for space is we're able to give members a very affordable price as a membership. So it's $50 for the year, not $50 per month. And that, you know, I almost see as an introductory gallery space to just try how to show in a gallery. And it's kind of a 101 space. And, you know, we have 160 members. So I'll throw out some stats for you, but I think these are some of the things that we can do and we can definitely expand on. I'll hand it over to Amy and Nate if they want to add any more, if we'll move on.
Great, thanks. So the whole process now, like visioning and trying to figure out what are some of the basic strategies we can try to achieve that vision. We've gone through this part now to where it's the realization of we can't do everything and shouldn't do everything. But what can we do? The next step in that process kind of materializes into the core initiatives that we wanted to talk with you all about today. Which are similar to the strategies, but they kind of have a finer point on them, because now at this stage in the planning process, you're talking about actions. We had a lot of board members who were excited about a lot of these different initiatives. So we're picking on them independently to talk about the ones that they're really excited about. And I think, Mary, you were going to talk about initiative number 1.
Yes. Yeah, well, the idea is to follow up on the mission of trying to get art alive and well in Stockton and the area. So we have a lot of groups like Jagged Lines, Stockton Symphony, Hagen, Mexican Heritage, Showbiz, all kinds of art groups. And each one is maybe struggling, maybe not, maybe successful, maybe needs some input with other organizations. So the idea was to have maybe a 1 or even a 2-day symposium. And we could try and get as many people from all of our art organizations together. And we could have discussions, we could have lectures, we could have breakout groups. We could collaborate on the things we're doing, the things that we're doing well, some of the problems we face, how can we help each other? Maybe even things like have a all-day all art fun day out at the San Joaquin Historical Society Museum. Maybe have a music festival with arts. Just throwing out all kinds of ideas that will keep us alive and well, and just keep the momentum going and the excitement going of art here in Stockton, because the more people get together, they get excited and then they want to do things. And then things don't just die on the vine because, oh, that was a great idea, but we never did anything. So that's where my project's going.
Thank you. And one thing I would add to that too is that this symposium, a lot of the conversation around it is about art and sharing art and connecting amongst the community, but a lot of it too is an opportunity to break out of our silo of the arts and begin engaging the for-profit sector and government agencies and you know, folks like City Hall, and begin engaging them on conversations wrapped around this vision. How do we create long-term sustainable funding for the arts? Well, we should probably have, you know, some folks who are involved in leading our community as a whole on that as well, to begin informing that process.
Right.
Just like this overall plan that we've developed takes more than just Stockton Art Leagues. Getting it off the ground will really take more than the arts community as well. And that was something that we were really hoping to hit upon in this symposium, and almost help us kind of leapfrog some of the other initiatives. So the second initiative is specific to the Stockton Art League, and I think Vicki was going to talk about it, but it's still important and very relevant to everybody, because so much of their plans really comes down to how do we open our doors to other arts programs. Since we have this great gallery here, how do we make sure that it's representing everybody in Stockton and is available to more folks? So Vicki, do you want to comment on it?
Sure. I'm also the chair of the Demos and Workshop Committee, and the past couple years we've had some really exciting talks and demos, and we want to expand on that. It's been already talked about on our physical location, which is really one of our primary assets for the Stockton Art League. Just having the art gallery and having space where we really could have some really fun events and special events is pretty exciting. And then, so what we like to do really is expand the programming to do cross promotion with artists and art organizations really within San Joaquin County, not just Stockton itself. And bring in artists of various art disciplines, not just visual arts, but this was touched on one of our strategies is to, it's almost like having a place where artists can come and they have a space to create, share ideas, meet, and just have that area where they could do exploration in a pretty safe space and a very welcoming space. And so basically is to really engage a broader diversity in arts and culture here. And another thing too, I know on the chat, someone mentioned it'd be great to have a database of art resources. And that's one thing we did talk about, is it would be great for the Stockton Art League, the Goodwin Gallery, to be a hub where artists can come in and say, hey, you know, what's going on in the art community here? And
that's segueing right into what I'm going to talk about, Initiative 3.
Okay, and so
The
I'll
arts
stop
community.
there if anybody wants to
Yeah.
segue.
Exactly what you're saying is, you know, since being with the gallery and being publicity and marketing chair for a number of years and seeing how diverse our community is, we really need to promote everything that's happening in our community. And one of the things that we kept talking about is, okay, we're doing as much as we can for what's going on with arts in our community, within the Miracle Mile, within graphic arts, but we're so diverse. And we need to have a place where we send in our information, and then this central hub is the main repository for this information to send it out to the rest of the community. And this got back to something that happened at UOP when we had Beyond the Borders project, and a number of nonprofits said, hey, yeah, you know, we don't have sometimes the technical means to do this, but if we had a place where we could send our information to and it gets out, we would love to have that happen. So we're revisiting that, and hopefully that's something that we could then do in the future. Okay, Initiative 4.
Thank you. Yes.
That's Paula.
Yeah, I believe so. Paula?
Yes, I'm here. So Initiative 4 is really the big picture thing. It's bringing back an endowment. Some of you may not know that there was an attempt. Well, we had an endowment for a while. I'll give you a brief history. 2001, the city of Stockton sold the landfill and designated $1.3 million for the Library Literacy Foundation and $1.3 million to the arts. And that was the beginning of an art granting process that happened for several years until the bankruptcy. during the bankruptcy, because you'll notice it says here, you know, past president for arts funding. In the bankruptcy, several things happened. We lost all the staff that the arts had, both the Arts Commission staff, office, and budget, public art staff, office, and budget. And we lost the endowment. The $1.3 million was just swallowed up in the bankruptcy. Okay. We believe that there is strong enough interest and such a new dynamic outpouring of art and artists at all levels of our community, witnessing like what's happening at Hatch, witnessing what's happening like with the mural projects around the community. There's just new people everywhere doing lots of things, but we from the ground up, we need to rebuild the idea of public and private interest in an endowment, because had we had an endowment when COVID hit, we could have supported a lot of artists, individual artists, and arts organizations. I know that the community in general, with COVID through the Small Business Administration, COVID Stockton Strong, etc., everybody was worried about small businesses, and people forget that artists are entrepreneurs, and arts organizations are small businesses. So we basically have to get our political house in order and not think that politics are not part of our job, because they really are. Art is political. All art is political. And we have to basically advocate for ourselves as a group and put on the biggest diverse face of our community as artists, and go back to the city, back to the county possibly, and basically to funders and other foundations that we might be able to marshal to support an endowment. One of the things that came out of it was an initiative like Measure M. A minuscule percentage of tax, if we could do something like that, get it on the ballot and sometime in the future and have this, we could generate millions of dollars actually. And then we could go back to people like Donna Brown for expertise and guidance in pulling that kind of community initiative forward. So what you need to know is that there is an arts foundation. It's a 501c3 foundation. It exists. There are several members here today, myself, Saul Cerna, Jessica Fong, and Jasmine Leak. So that's young bloods. That's young bloods. And the other members I won't go into, but there's 8 people on the foundation, and we have kept it going as a foundation, keeping up its nonprofit status, keeping its books together, keeping its insurance together. So we have the political wherewithal, we have the nonprofit structure wherewithal to develop a new endowment. So that's the group I'm going to be leading later, but that's what we're talking about, because we just need a larger umbrella of financial support and an organization that can attract the attention of like National Endowment or larger funding opportunities. So I look forward to any of you who want to talk about that later.
Thank you so much, Paula. And that's actually also a great lead into Initiative 5, creating partnerships along intersections of art. My name is Amal. I am one of the newest members of the board, along with Angela Maxon and Paula. And I've done quite a bit of work around advocating for artists from different marginalized populations throughout my career, but as both an artist and a cultural worker. And along with this initiative, I think that one of the things that we can't forget is that if we want to advocate for the health of the arts in Stockton, we have to advocate for the health of the community, or that the health of the arts is inseparable from the health of the community, and that we can focus in moving forward with this vision that we have, focusing specifically and naming and being explicit about the intersections of health, environmental, social, and racial justice in our home is inseparable from the arts, and will actually, like, if we're talking about sustainability of the arts in Stockton, if we want our arts to like be healthy and thriving, then merging ourselves with ongoing struggles for justice and for advocacy and for health is something that we can, like, you know, purposefully kind of collaborate on and make strategic partnerships with. And we have a lot of ideas around this. Things came up around partnering with different health offices in town, public health offices, whether it's helping survivors of intimate partner violence, or doctors' offices having arts in there, or like programs, or having like artists in the database offer like their services. So there's quite a bit of like options for how the possibilities of this can look like. And I think these conversations are just starting and are really exciting. Art is such a powerful venue for talking about experiences with social injustice, violence, trauma, poverty, and healing, and acknowledging the histories of structural violence and the current realities of structural violence in Stockton around policing and targeting of specific communities, as well as like Stockton's huge history of like incarceration when it comes to either mental hospitals and other things, the destruction of the communities with the Highway 4 and all of that. Like, this is something that is part of the city, and that like we can really network with folks across different sectors, because if we want the arts to thrive, we have to do all of this. So there's a lot of really cool conversations to be had around this, and we have several notes, and I can't wait to get into it with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And that really is, I mean, it's its own initiative, but as you can imagine, that is an initiative that we had a hard time, like, is this an initiative or is it a value? And I think in the end, we kind of decided that this is both. It's something that we have to very intentionally work towards, but at the same time, it's something that we have to weave into everything that we're doing. So it is also a value. But yeah, and that's why it's such an important one. The final initiative we were going to have Elazar and B talk about, which is developing and enhancing cross-sector arts campaigns.
Okay, I think I'll start. Part of this this initiative interlaces with all the other ones. We've already talked about communication. We've talked about finding a network and partnering with other groups. But this part, I think, has to do with all those entities communicating with each other through expression. So in a way that that we can educate people who need to know why the arts are important. Maybe we need to do an education campaign as far as letting people know why fund the arts, why allow art in public places. Why is it better to express yourself through the visual and performing arts rather than through violence, maybe? And so in this campaign, it could look something like businesses grouping together and forming a connection with artistic groups, with cultural groups, and then having those groups be able to display their work at a business location. It could look like giving voice to the groups of different cultural groups in the city, and having them be able to communicate in the legalese or the language that the city uses to speak and to get initiatives passed. It could look like educating people on why the arts are healthy and promote mental health, as was already discussed earlier. And then maybe ways for the visual and performing arts to maybe be seen in the community, maybe outside, maybe displayed in the business windows, for example. Artists could be assigned maybe to different businesses during a certain week, and their art could be displayed there. In that way, the arts bring in the customers, and the customers enjoy the art, and also enhance the business part of it. And then I'm going to let Elazar go ahead and finish up.
Okay, well, thank you. You really mentioned pretty much the heart of what we're talking about here. I just want to add, I think the way that the idea of this language came out was because we were trying to digest sort of the different scale levels at which to find solutions. And so as came up earlier in this conversation, art is political, right? And there's no way to separate art and the community that there's an interconnection, and arts is a part of the breathing life of the everyday. And so if we help promote and create this society where there's just art everywhere, constantly art, then it's harder to believe that you're not supposed to have art everywhere. Like, we shouldn't have to fight for it. We should just make it, just put it out there. And the Stockton Art League, I think, is positioned in a really interesting way because people can come in, join it, and then start to promote their work. The Artist of the Month program is a really interesting, already existing way to, highlight individual people. There's relationships that are happening with the airport and other organizations. Like, there's a platform that's available, and the city also has expressed a willingness to open new doorways to see art publicly, different things like that. So we're all, I think we're all on the same page of just putting more art out there, promoting the idea of art as a piece of the lifeblood of society is going to add one more piece to the Stockton we all want to see.
And I would just add to that it's also adding to the piece around sustainability for local artists. If we have artist pieces all over town, ideally, that would be something that people could pay to host, and that would help to increase sales of art, of visual art, but also, we had talked about things like performing arts in different spaces too.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, especially 5 and 6 both. I think one of the, we're going to talk about how these all leverage each other in a little bit, but I think they really leverage a lot of the sustainability that we're talking about. How do you create a world in which artists can be professional artists? They can do that for a living. Well, you need a culture that values art. So how do you make your culture value art more? Well, you show at the intersections of how it affects these really, base root things like health and culture. You put it out there in places so it's constantly a part of people's lives. And that helps you create the value that makes these conversations that we're looking to have about sustaining our arts community a lot easier.
I was just going to say the same thing, Nate. If you want people to support the arts, you got to create that culture in your community. Right now it's just enclosed to just the artists, the galleries, the museums. We really don't have that art culture in this community yet. And that's what we got to build on. We need more art festivals, more art events, to get the community involved to support it, and support the local artists too. Yeah. So I think as long as we keep pushing the arts to the public, it's going to get embraced and it's going to get supported. And there's going to be more push to encourage it and keep it going and thriving. So one thing I've been wanting to do, I'm trying to do right now is, we look at most big cities, they all have monthly art festivals, art events. That's one thing we don't have and we need to have. And I'm trying to do one October 3rd, but it's like Sacramento's second Saturday. I've never been to it, but I've heard it's basically businesses display artwork of local artists. You got galleries open, you got museums open, and it just focuses arts. I would love to see that here and tie in all the different organizations, Goodwin Gallery, Mexican Heritage Center, Hagen. But right now I know we're in a funky thing with outdoors only, but I think we could still do something. But I agree totally what you're saying. We have to create that culture in this community.
Yeah, thank you, Saul. And thank you again, because that's a perfect segue into where we're going next. So, so the reason we have you all here is, one of the reasons we have you here is that we hope that out of all of the things we talked about, this is part of the reality that you want to see too. Maybe it's not everything that we're talking about, but if a piece of the reality that you have in is encapsulated here somewhere, we'd like to really get an opportunity to talk to you specifically about that, which is where the breakout groups are going to come in. So we don't want to just shove you into any old breakout group. We really want you to talk to folks about any of these specific topics that you're personally really excited about or curious about. And so what we'd like to do is, for all of the guests, we'd like to have you type into chat your name, and then just based on the numbers of these initiatives, just put what number you would like to have a conversation about with folks. Oh yeah, 2 numbers, sorry. Mm-hmm.
And I also just kind of wanted to build, while people were thinking, I wanted to build a little bit on what Saul was saying and what we were talking about with valuing art as a community. I've moved in a lot of different circles in nonprofit, in government, in healthcare and education in Stockton, and we talk a lot about community voice, about storytelling and focus groups and how important it is to hear what the people want and what the community wants. And I don't think we acknowledge enough that our arts, no matter what kind of art it is, those are our stories too. Those are our voices, and we don't celebrate them in the same way as we do those other opportunities. We don't get together and talk about how art is a reflection of what we want as a community, or what we want to see, what we're doing, what we hope for, what matters to us. And I think that's a really important conversation that we need to start having, and validating art as our messaging, as a form of our storytelling, and not just a representation of what we want to see or what we're thinking.
So one of the processes that we did is we did a questionnaire with all of the board members and folks who have been involved in the planning process so far. And a lot of it kind of was to gauge, out of these 6 initiatives, how important do you feel they all are? And also, what do you think the difficulty involved of pulling these off is going to be? And we're going to do the same thing with everybody. What we'll do is after this conversation, we'll send out a questionnaire to everybody who participated, because we want to get your input too. But specifically, the reason why I wanted to bring up this slide is all of the little blue arrows you see. The thing about collaboration like this is that none of these specific initiatives live in a vacuum. In order to have a sound strategic approach to things, you need to make sure that work that you might be doing in one category is leveraging work that you're doing in other categories. So like looking at these arrows, for example, you can see we had a lot of conversation about how the symposium could really kickstart a lot of these other initiatives if we plan it properly. We had conversations about how the gallery work and broadening what we're doing at Stockton Art League's gallery could help launch the symposium. And so this is just something that I would like to plant in your head now as we're talking about this. While you're talking about the specific initiatives, keep the other ones in mind too, because those initiatives and the work that we're going to be doing on those initiatives are more tools in our toolbox at that point that we can use to build the one specific initiative that you're talking about in these groups. And I think we might need a few more minutes to get the breakout groups.
You can go ahead and go to the next slide, and we can start talking about it. And I think we almost have everyone.
Great.
I'm sorry, I just want to check in. Are you going to be sending out the Jamboard links again to everyone, or I also have it, but just wanted to check that.
Thank you for reminding us. Yeah, so one of the tools that we used in this process is an online whiteboard called Jamboard. We're going to be dropping a link to everybody, and it works exactly like a whiteboard just on your screen. What we'll do is each breakout group will have somebody from Stockton Art League present in there to basically take notes and to write these ideas down as everybody is discussing them. And you'll see what that matrix looks like. There are a couple of discussion points for each of these. But yeah, we're going to send out a link in chat. And if you click on that, that should bring up this whiteboard, this online whiteboard. And if it doesn't, just speak up and let us know, and we can correct it if it isn't coming up.
Yes, the only other thing I would say is Nate, if you can just switch the view to the Jamboard really quickly.
Mhm.
I think we're almost ready to go into groups. I think I have everybody sorted. And like Nate said, we're going to go into 2 different groups. So you'll start talking about one conversation, and then we'll come back together, and then we'll switch you to a different conversation. So you have opportunity to talk about more than one thing. And I will say, if you're excited about a lot of things, number 1, amazing, awesome, good, because we need all the help we can get. And number 2, we're going to send out a survey after this. So if you don't get to be part of the discussion of all of the ideas that you really want to talk about, we will have an opportunity for you to share in writing any additional thoughts that you have about any of these. And you'll also be able to add notes to the Jamboard on your own if you are so technically inclined and would like to do so. So once you get into your breakout groups, one of your facilitators for the group will be a Stockton Art League board member, and they will walk you through some of the thoughts we've already discussed among the board. You know, how would this work? What is it? So this is the example right now, the art symposium event. We've had some thoughts about what it would look like. What kinds of things would we want to talk about? What kind of roles would we need people to play? And it's sort of just been a giant brainstorm. So once you guys get into your groups, we have some note takers already assigned, but if you would like to go on the Jamboard yourself and play around with it and add some notes on your own, you are more than welcome to. And the conversation is going to be around these 4 topics. What is the momentum already around this idea? Is somebody already doing something like this, or working toward it, or talking about it in the arts community or otherwise? Because even if somebody's doing it not in the arts community, can we learn from them? What does success look like for a program like this? What would it mean if this event comes together? Does it mean 50 people show up? Does it mean that it's funded completely? What does that look like? What are the challenges that we see for any of these ideas? What are the barriers that could be in the way, and what's missing? What thoughts haven't we even talked about yet? So like I said, the facilitator will take you through some of the thoughts that we've already discussed, and you can continue to discuss those things or build off of them, but the facilitator and the note taker in the group will kind of be capturing this here for each idea in your small group. And then once we come back together and go into a different group, you'll have a nice clean whiteboard to talk about with your group as well.
Different places.
I'm gonna just be silent for a moment. Sorry.
Did you have fun, Amal?
Oh my gosh, yes, it was so great. We had a wonderful time. I'm really excited to find people to make stuff happen with.
I know, it is exciting.
And Donna, I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. I was going to message you too. I think we're doing another session in the same group. So if you want to rejoin group 5 or join a different one, you're welcome to. I'd love to hear more about what you have to say.
So what we're thinking about doing is, since everybody gave their 2 groups that they want to be in, what we're going to do is we're going to keep the facilitators the same, but we're going to put you into the other group that you expressed interest in. But before we do that, does anybody want to share out some of your thoughts? Like I want to take a couple of minutes to make sure that at least a couple of the brilliant ideas that were popping up on those Jamboards that I saw make it out here to the larger group.
I think a big thing that came up with us just briefly is the artists are the storytellers. I believe Alicia said that, but that was, we had 2 other theater folks, Donna and Justin, I believe, in our group, and that as we change the culture and as the culture changes and we look at what is happening in different ways, artists can be the one that tell the story and shift the narrative, and there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
In the group about communication and the hub, it narrowed down to, if we're going to do this the right way, we need to have this as a paid position. We talked about the umbrella that oversees all the different programs. And in terms of communication, it needs to be fed into one central place. And to have that successful, we feel it can't be just done by volunteers. So we're looking at if the city or the county, since that's where the money is, would have some department for culture and the arts.
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point, Denny, just to share with all of the folks who are stakeholders here today. Throughout this process, we've really tried to underscore the whole idea that vision is different than mission, and vision is the world we want to see, but we might not have the right mission to move certain pieces of these of this vision forward. And so we have to be good with parts of this vision living at somebody else's house entirely, right? Like there's somebody else out there who can do that a million times better than we can. And we're perfectly happy with that so long as they're just out there rocking and rolling with it. And so that's going to be a big discussion, is like Denny was saying, like, where does that live?
I'd like to talk about initiative number 4 because I think it's the scariest one to try to, it's the biggest, it's the Goliath. It's the big one, and I think it's the one that scares most people off. But a couple of things came out of that. Number one, looking at a Measure M or some kind of tax. We need to do a little bit of research to find out if there are any taxes that are sunsetting so that the community doesn't feel like it's just more and more and more, but something's ending and something's coming on, and that's a really good piece of advice we were discussing. And then we looked at a couple of models like United Way or the other community, San Joaquin Community Foundation, built of a lot of groups, investment from a lot of sources. So not just the city, etc., not just the government, but from grassroots, from foundation, from corporations, etc. And then having how the money is spent and allocated done by the people who would be receiving it, by the artists and the organizations themselves, so that we don't have the philanthropists or the funders telling us how to spend the money. So we had a pretty good conversation, and if anybody would like to entertain that next group, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that from group 2, which is about programming, Tom and I got to talk our own little group on ourselves, and we talked about, or Thomas said, we need to go where the grass needs growing. And so I kind of leave you with that, and like how to actually get to the artists, not have the artists come to us, which is, I think, it's a brand new concept that we just really need to explore. So thanks, Thomas, for that.
Yeah, read that. I think that, people talk about changing the culture to like make people care about arts and culture, but I think that people actually really do care about arts and cultures. It's just that they're not, we've been taught that isn't culture and that isn't art. That's just what we do or whatever. And so I think that reflects that as well.
Thanks.
Number 1 was really insightful. A lot of discussion about the symposium, target audiences, a list of breakout sessions, all kinds of new ideas about from teaching art to how to market art, and getting on social media. And so it was really interesting, and we'll see where it goes from there.
In group 6, we spoke about the different ways that we can start to connect the pieces, create more opportunities for local artists, both in vending and in display, and also the pathways to that, the accessibility and the way that we can, show younger folks that it's easy to, get there. And then the conversation took an interesting turn where we actually started to talk about city code briefly, and the barriers to entry if someone wants to make a public event or do some kind of art display. And so the question of if we wanted to talk about changing the city code, how? Which is just an open-ended question at this point.
That's brilliant insight. Yeah, thank you for whoever threw that in.
I think that's not only important to talk about for the future, because you have a 45-day application period for special events, right? But Fathers and Families and I were able to do a caravan. And so the police had a presence, but they never came to stop the event. We did social distancing. There were a lot of best practices. And I think if we analyze that and share it amongst ourselves, how we were able to successfully do something in this time period that we can tweak, improve, and because no one else has done it before. We made a drive-through in the parking lot. We didn't let people get out of their cars. So they had to go around and they were provided information for the census, swag, food, and they had to drive right back out. But they enjoyed the music, they enjoyed the art, and it was just so innovative. And I just wanted to share that with you, that I feel I want to go back to them and say, hey, let's share what went well and what didn't go well, because someone else may want to do the same thing.
Absolutely. I love that.
And that would be a great element to add to the group that Denny was into, like a communications hub. You know, how do we share what's effective too? And how do we communicate on stuff like Elazar was talking about? You know, like are the fees for hosting an art event, you know, too much? I know, like, I've helped Pride festivals for years and years and years, and we're always blown away at the beginning where it's like, oh, we have to pay for the place. Okay, the place is in the county. Now we have to pay the sheriff's department to come out there too. Okay, oh, you also need private security. Okay, well, now you need food inspection. And like, how do we get these municipal bodies to streamline that for us? And maybe that's their investment in the arts community, right? Like, you know, Stockton PD doesn't give us any money to promote the arts, but they cover the costs of their people who have to be at those events. Maybe, you know, maybe that's what we moved to. And so now who do we line up with in the government who is friendly to our cause, who could help us navigate that?
Yep, all of it. I love it. Oh, yeah. So see, these
I think certain partnerships and willingness to work with commerce has been great, because working with SAL and then being connected to the owners of Terra Coffee has kind of really helped bring that together. Is okay, there's like people who work in government who are also artists, and so you can, or who own coffee shops. There are these like liaisons already out there. We just gotta like go hunt for them, and like someone said earlier, you gotta go find the artists. I think that's super key. Can't wait for anyone to come to anyone, because you just haven't met everyone so far. And not to be just, why haven't you heard of me yet? Like, I don't know, you haven't heard of me either. that happened recently.
I love it. This is great. Thank you so much, guys. I'm taking notes, and I know that there's notes on the jam boards too. I want to go ahead and move us into our next session, because I'm realizing that time is just flying by. But I will say, so everyone picked their 2 ideas, and for the second session, our guests, our stakeholders that are not on the board, they really just wanted to divide themselves into Initiative 1, which was the symposium, Initiative 3, which is the communications hub, and Initiative 5, which was the intersection of arts in other sectors. And so I am happy to go ahead and put everybody in there, and then board members, if you are leading those number 2, 4, and 6, and you want me to put you in those other groups to add to the discussion, we can definitely go ahead and do that, just so that everybody can be where they want to be, and we'll have a nice, rich discussion.
Right, great.
Cool.
We will see you guys then in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, guys.
Sorry that one was shorter. I was listening in on group 5, because I'm sitting right next to somebody who's in that group. And I could tell everyone was just like, oh, I want to talk more.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. That's amazing. Like I said in my little 2-minute warning, I was like, don't worry. This is the beginning of these conversations. This is exactly what we wanted to do, was to start this energy around these ideas and start, not start, because some of you are already working on these things. Some of you are very, very actively involved in doing this work. So I don't mean to disrespect that work, but start working on it together, collectively, because that's where our community power is. So
I just love you guys are doing this,
Thank you.
putting all the community art brains together.
Yes.
I love this. Like, I feel like even if, you know, we're not getting to really kind of specific kind of policy, make it happen in our discussions, just having everyone in the same space is kind of electrifying and great.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an important first step too, right? Like we're still, all of us are still kicking the tires on this, you know, vision. We're pretty sure it's what we all want to see, or there's some of us who are like, well, that part and that part are super important to me. And part of that process is really talking it through, and hopefully at some point in that process, sort of falling in love with each other and being like, God damn, I love that guy's brain. I want to work on something. You know, that's where the real, for me,
Yeah, so many people are passionate about this.
Yes.
That is great.
Yeah.
And the different ideas, all the way from having a Batman signal to get artists to at least get information, and the thing of Google Maps. That is fantastic. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
great. All right. So it is coming up on 6 o'clock, and we want to respect everyone's time and their own personal commitments to their families and their homes. I will just quickly have Nate screen share our next steps. And I will do the logistics, and then I'll let Jessica and Denny close us out. So the next steps for Stockton Art League, we are still in the middle of strategic planning. So we're going to keep rolling on this process and bring in all of this input to the work that we are doing with Stockton Art League around building this vision and all of the descriptors and kind of the written beginnings of work plans around these ideas. We will be sharing a PDF of the Jamboards with all of you. So if you have the link, feel free to go ahead and just like peruse what everybody else was thinking. But we will send a PDF of that to you all as well, so that you can have that. We will also send a survey to folks for whatever to so that you can give any additional feedback. And we're also going to be asking questions about, like, do you want to continue to be involved in Initiative 1, Initiative 2, so we can make sure you get kind of on the list. I loved the idea, somebody was saying in the chat, that we should share Instagram handle. So we'll make sure to put in a question if you want to share your Instagram handle, if you want to share your contact information with other folks. We'll add all that stuff there. Finally, we will follow up with some next steps. Like we said from the very beginning, Stockton Art League is a partner in this. We're starting to facilitate these conversations, but we are looking for different leaders in each of these different initiatives to kind of step up and either individually or collectively continue to move these forward. But we will help get the ball rolling. And I think that is all of our next steps. So watch out for an email from us. Make sure to watch Brandon Leak tonight and vote 1,000,000 times, because he's amazing. And if you have not watched his performances so far, get on YouTube and go look at them so that you can have so much pride for this young man. He's amazing personally and professionally. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it along to Jess and Denny to close us out. Thank you all.
Are you there, Jess? Okay, if not, I'll take over at least this part. really want to thank Nate and Amy for tackling this huge project in terms of strategic planning. I've been involved in a lot of these throughout my years with the county and with other nonprofits. And in terms of doing this and utilizing this whole thing of Zoom, it's been fantastic and it's really worked well. And I just hope in terms of everything else we've talked about, this is planting the seed. And from there, things are going to grow beautifully. So again, Nate, thank you. Amy, thank you.
Thanks.
And all the rest of the participants. Good seeing people's faces and knowing everybody at least still breathing.
Yeah, this has been really encouraging to hear everyone's feedback and listen to what you guys are doing as well, and seeing where we can help share and get your programs like out there to some of our members, and help do some of the work as well. I definitely want to hear more about what's happening in the next month as well as next year about what everyone's doing. I think that's the whole point of that, everyone's seeing each other's faces here. So this is just the first conversation of many. So I'll leave it at that.
Next one.
Very good.
Great. Thank you so much, folks. And thanks again to the Stockton Art League. It's inspiring to find an organization that steps up and says that they want to be the bridge, or they want to be the person who at least starts pitching bridge ideas at others. It's been a pleasure for us, so thank you. All right, look for our next steps then, and we will keep you up to date on all of the information that we've created here tonight and what the outcomes of it are and all of that other good stuff. Is that it?
I think so.
All right. Thank
Enjoy
you.
dinner.
Stay well
Bye.
and safe, everybody.
Yes.
Bye all.
Hope we see you again soon.
Yes.
Bye. Thanks
Okay.
for coming.